go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Cameron Davis. I am a full-time freelancer. I've been freelancing for 2 years. Design is my second career. I started off as a mechanical engineer, working for Honeywell when I graduated college. In the pandemic, I got laid off and was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And also my wife was an amazing part of that journey, and she was just like, hey, we don't have to do things that we don't like in this moment. There's a lot of turmoil and noise going on. We can choose something else. And through all the tears, I was like, yes, can we do something else? So I thank her so much for that opportunity and being someone's partner and believing in them past what I believed in myself at the moment. So I like to give that at the beginning. But today you are here for my Humans Over Algorithms presentation. I think this moment is very pivotal in what's kind of going on in our industry, in the world, and kind of how we're looking at algorithms and the respect, or how do I say it, the value we are giving to them over kind of the people who create them and the people who have to participate in them. So Humans Over Algorithms is something that I coined or really came up with when I lost my job in 2020, and it's kind of an ethos that I've had in how I do work and how I do business. I'm in my freelance very human and relationship first, and I think that is people. I don't know. This feels weird, but people are like, "Oh, well, you're so successful in what you're doing, and you're doing really well, and being someone who was outside of the field, not into the field, and you have clients, and you're doing it full time." And I just think I have to look back and thank all the people that have been a part of that process. In the beginning, when I knew nothing, and I reached out to them, and they gave me the keys and everything. So people are still important, and that's kind of the angle that we're going to start with. So firstly, I really love this quote to kind of kick everything off. I'm going to have a hell of a good time in the process of buying one envelope. And that comes from Kurt Vonnegut. It's from his book, A Man Without a Country. And the full quote is, Kurt Vonnegut tells his wife he's going to buy an envelope. Oh, she says, well, you're not a poor man. Why don't you go online and buy 100 envelopes and put them in the closet? And so I pretend not to hear and go out to get an envelope because I'm going to have a hell of a good time in the process of buying one envelope. I meet a lot of people, and I see some great looking babies, and a fire engine goes by, and I give them the thumbs up. And I'll ask a woman what kind of dog that is, and I don't know. The moral of the story is we're here on Earth to fart around. And of course, the computers will do us out of that. And what the computer people don't realize, or they don't care, is we're dancing animals. We love to move around, and it's like we're not supposed to dance at all anymore. Let's all get up and move around and be a bit right now, or at least dance. So that is kind of to set the stage of what we're talking about here. I have another one. We've surrendered our values to an economic system that actively harms what we love. And I think that one speaks volumes to what we do as designers and creatives and the passion that we have for the things that we make with our hands. And that comes from the author, Robin Wall Kimmerer. She writes the book, The Service Berry, and in that she has a quote, how are we going to fall in love with the world if we don't pick berries? So how do we find those things, those joys, the texture in our life without doing the things that are tangible and that are analog and that are away from these computers and machines that we put in front of ourselves to, quote unquote, make our lives easier? So my first kickoff thought for all of this is start with going analog. Sketch on paper, buy a record player. We all know that having a record player, every 10 minutes you're flipping over the record, but in those moments of flipping over the record, you're living, you're experiencing, you're dealing with hard things. And learn how to make good espresso. I'm not gonna lie, I am a coffee snob. And if I go to a coffee shop and they have bad coffee, they better have something else that I like. Like good environment, good people. So I will really quickly mark a coffee shop off my list if they don't have good espresso. So that's kind of like what is to kick us off here. Something that I want to take note of, I think this is the part where we get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, a little bit more of the like truth and the facts. How many times do we put tech over human experiences? I feel like nowadays people wake up and the first thing they pick up is their phone. And the first thing they look at is Instagram or social media. And some of these people have families and kids, and the first thing that they go to is something that is not those connections that they have in the world. So I want to talk about like how we are picking tech because it is convenient. But instead of going to our neighbor, we're going to DoorDash or we're going to Instacart when you just needed a cup of sugar. You didn't need to go all the way around to go to Instacart and order a whole container worth of sugar. And in those moments, we miss things. We miss opportunities to connect with the people who are around us. Those communities that we so much need right now, especially in the times that we're in and the things that are going on in our world, we have severed over convenience. And they're right there. You're probably like 3 feet away from your neighbor if you live in an apartment. The door is right there, just to say hi or just to introduce yourself. There's an opportunity there to get to know another human being who experiences a lot of the same things you experience. They experience the landlord not coming to fix the property in time. They experience the weather change. They experience the moving trucks that's pulled up in front of all of our cars and now we can't move our car. They experience all of those things right there with you. So I think also talking about communication, quality of communication steps down. So we go from in-person, then we go to phone calls, and then we go to texting or messaging. And in those step downs, we lose a lot of much needed context. In person, you can see how the mannerisms of somebody, you can see how the corner of their smile turns up when you say certain words, or how they do frown a little bit when you bring up certain topics. There is a lot that can be learned in those moments, but we are deciding to give those up for, again, convenience, ease, buying in on hype, which is my next point. There is a hype machine. We live in a capitalist society that is only here to make money. So there is a machine that is out there to push ideas and things that are only to get people to spend their money where they want you to spend your money. So we always feel that like jumping on the newest thing is to get us ahead, and well, everyone needs to know this thing. This is going to be the thing in the future. At the moment, it isn't though. So why aren't we questioning that? We talk about the metaverse and how big of a deal that was supposed to be. That has not gone anywhere. We talk about Siri, and everyone's supposed to be using Siri 10 years ago. That is not a thing either. So we have to take the moment to pause and think about what is going on. Our moment right now is AI. That is the truth. And we have to, I know we all feel like taking in this thing could make our life more convenient, but we also have to have both sides of the argument. And I feel like that's what we are forgoing in a lot of the conversations that we're having around technology right now. We just want to kind of move forward in a world and make the world more and have more tools. And maybe more isn't where we should be going. So that's the hard parts. That's the honest, real truth about all of it. But again, we go back to the quote. We are dancing animals. We literally are. We love that. That's where we find joy. So sometimes doing what is harder is always more fun. And we sat here and listened to Lincoln. And if you look at Lincoln's work, you can tell that they are having a good time. Are they making the most money? Who knows? But they are having a good time while they're doing it. And a lot of the times they're starting on a piece of paper. They're starting at a sketch. They're not starting on their computers trying to come up with what everybody else has or from an algorithm that is put together of what everyone else has already done. They're looking for the nooks and the crannies and the caves and the things that are undiscovered. And I feel like we need to spend more time in those places, especially as designers. It pushes what we do and like what people understand us to do a lot further than presenting them the same things that have already been done. So with this, I can say all of this stuff, but I still have to bring it back to myself. And I have struggled with all of this. This is not anything, I'm not the perfect person. I have not like figured it out. These are just things that I have noticed, and I have great people in my life to have these conversations with. So like all of us, I have struggled with authenticity. Even with the smile that I have, I struggle with authenticity and connecting with people. A lot of that started when I went to that first corporate job, working at like, I think Honeywell's like a Fortune 5 company. And just the life of being a Black person in a corporation or a system like that, you spend a lot of times getting smashed down and like pressed into places where they either think you belong or where you have been conditioned to think that you belong. And through that process, I lost a lot of who I was. I felt like a ghost. I felt like I went to work for 8 hours, came home, and I was still in that work mode, still not being myself, still having a hard time connecting with my wife. I had a son around the time that I worked at Honeywell, and I didn't know him. I didn't connect with him at that moment. It was all about work. It was all about getting to that next point, making up. My number was, oh, as soon as I make $100,000, I will be good. Like everything will be figured out. I will be at the right place when I make $100,000. Never happened, but that's just where my mind was at the time. And then we stepped forward into business and like being laid off and then having to start my own business. And then it's also like, well, what do I do? Like, how do I do this thing? How do I do business? And you start looking around and you look at people who are doing well and you look at the trends and you hop on everything else everyone else is doing, but don't take the time to kind of hear what you want to do or who you want to be or how you want to show up. So I struggle with that a lot. I feel like it's only been the last like year or so that I've kind of like understood, and that's why the humans over algorithms thing is a big deal. It's like something that I didn't know what it was at the time, but I kind of dusted it off and I'm like, oh, that is my voice. That is what I care about. That is who I want to be. Another thing that was really pivotal is I started a podcast around the time I got laid off. And it was honestly one of the first times I heard my own voice. Like, I know podcasts are just everywhere and everyone pushes podcasts or content. And something weird does happen when you do content or you do podcasting is you give yourself the space to actually open up. And if you're doing it out of pure like wanting to or pure joy or pure like listening to your own voice, you can find what you sound like. And again, like what Lincoln said, when you find what you sound like, you stand out. And that is a big deal. So podcasting was a really good opportunity for me to actually do that. Like, I think my first iteration of a podcast, we only got to like 30 episodes, but that was 30 hours of hearing myself talk about things that most of the time I cared about. So spending the time with yourself is a really, really big deal. And the last is personal. And again, I had a hard time connecting, even with myself. So not being vulnerable because I was literally afraid to exist. 2020 was a hard time. Like, I mean, even the years before that, there's been a lot going on. So I now live as a rebellion to all of that stuff. Like, I exist because I have to, and I exist and I do what I do because I have to, or otherwise I'm feeding into someone else's system. So I also felt like I had nothing to add, which is a lie. Everyone has a perspective, everyone has a story, and we decide that our stories aren't as great as everyone else's, but everybody's story is. Like, you've done things that other people haven't, and that's just a fact. So those are kind of the things that kind of I struggle with. So regardless of how we might feel, we all still have a voice and a perspective that is what matters. People can't see you until you start being more of the things that make you you. Which is, I'm gonna say it again because that's a big one. People can't see you until you start being more of the things that make you you. And then I'm gonna break that by doing something goofy. Stand out above the crowd, even if I gotta shout out loud. So mine is the only face you see. I'm gonna stand out so you notice me. I mean, I love this movie. I feel like it is about how do you do something different and how do you actually like be seen. But goofy, of course. But something that I've learned and realized about myself is like some of the things that I honestly hated about myself and I didn't like at all was the fact that I was loud, I was emotional, I was a little bit too silly in moments. I can recall being in like third grade and getting in trouble for talking too much. I would always have to pull a card for like talking too much. But now I realize those things are benefits and those things are positives, and the experiences that we have in life don't necessarily weigh us down, and we don't have to keep those. So find those little again nooks and crannies in your own self that might have once been something that you felt was a negative, but now you feel like you can leverage to be weird, to be different, to stand out. So finally, we're going to get to some tips. I feel like these are things that helped me escape the algorithm even just a little bit. Also a disclaimer, I'm not saying I'm anywhere close to an expert in this. I'm still working on a lot of it myself, but at least we got to start the conversation within ourselves at some point. So when it comes to work, one of my biggest tips is to start with inspo outside of online locations. I know it's easy, again, it's convenient to go to Pinterest, it's convenient to go to Behance, it's easy to go scroll Instagram, but again, you're seeing the same stuff that everyone else is doing. And maybe the project calls for you to go to a movie and go see something that you have never seen before, go to the library and look at the covers on books. I love going to Target, and especially the beauty aisle. The beauty aisle has beautiful branding everywhere. And go seek out those places that you like to go when you go to start a project that are a little bit weird, a little bit different, but they do give you, again, those creases and those nooks. You're looking in different places than everybody else. My second tip is do what you think is cool as much as possible. I know we do a lot of work that has to do with like client feedback and not necessarily our direction, but what's wrong with starting proof with what you thought should have been the right direction and then kind of working to a middle ground once you get more feedback. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as you're listening to the brief. So really like go for it. Like really take the opportunity. Every time we get to like take a situation or take a swing at doing the work that we love, why not? Like why not go for it? Why not do something that is, hey, I saw this thing 5 years ago that might be cool for this thing. So how about you just give it a try in that moment? So that's something that I try to do more. And I feel like this is something that I don't know if this is the right approach, but I feel like first drafts are there to mess up. They're not supposed to be perfect. So mess up the first draft. Like give them what the brief, do the brief, but the most important part of a first draft is that conversation afterwards. Then you can level set and understand. But I understand that there's asterisks. It has to be at least what they're expecting. It can't be so far out there that they're like, whoa, who is this guy? Like, who did I decide to work with? So asterisks do within boundaries of what their expectations are. And then always start with people in mind. And I think what that means to me is always start with the end goal. You know, someone has to consume this. You know, someone has to see it. Start with thinking about those people. What do they expect to see? What is something they're going through? What is something hard that we can make sure that we don't put in front of them that would alienate the work that we're doing? So really spend time trying to be in other people's shoes. What also goes with that is when it comes to putting teams together, how can we get like different perspectives on these problems? Because I feel like a lot of what's happening is we're getting the same perspective on design work. We're getting these same teams of the same types of people, and it's watering down what could be good opportunities to connect again with the other human at the other end of that work. So put together teams that you just didn't even expect. Yes, they have the strengths or the requirements needed to get the jobs done, But maybe on this one, you feel like there's an area that 90% of the team has it. Let's pull someone else in that needs a little bit more experience, who might give us a more Gen Z approach to this. So take the risk with also the people that you involved, not just the design or the concept or the idea. Take risk on people. I think we've all been there where we've wanted a job and no one would take a risk on you. So take a risk on people, and people have different perspectives and understandings and stories, and they can help you. So next we're going to talk about in networking. Networking is something that I hated at the beginning, and that is like a deep hate. I was terrified. I'm like, who are these people? These people don't know who I am. They're not going to know me on like Instagram or social media. Networking was scary. I didn't come up with this, but someone was like, you should be like DMing or cold DMing the people that you think are really cool. And so I think the first tip is if you love what someone does, then tell them, send them the message, reach out to them. If you know them in the community or in person, let them know that what they're doing you think is dope. Because I think that helps people feel more at home in the work that they're making, but also makes you feel more like you're connected to people who are doing cool stuff. I just love to watch people do what they love. I think that is watching people dance. Like it's beauty, there's joy. So spend time doing that. And I know it's hard. The hardest part for me was like, well, what if they don't message me back? Or that expectation of like, what if they say something that is negative or like hard to take? They won't. If they don't message you back, that doesn't mean they don't like you. That means that they might be busy or they're going through things. That doesn't mean that you can't be a fan even though. Like you can still be a fan of someone even though. So spend time telling people that they're dope, and I think that will go a long way when it comes to networking. A lot of the people that I've had on my podcast are people that I thought were really cool, and I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to talk to this person. And I reached out, and they're like, oh, of course. And a lot of it started with like, hey, can I chat with you for an hour? And then you're like, dope. And we would sit there and have like colleagues having a conversation around the water cooler, and that is just that easy. It's just one message, and it can start off a relationship that you never expected. Number two there is online networking is great, but work to make in-person connections more. I think this is one that I am in the process of working on. I've done a lot of, because I think it was more so because of 2020 and what was going on at that time. We all were online. There was like really nothing else we can do about it. I feel like it's just now that we're like able to actually get back to those events and those things that were like kind of happening. So if there's an opportunity to meet someone in your town or in your city, go and ask them to coffee. Go and have like a chat, or ask them to dinner, ask them to lunch, whatever feels comfortable to you, but make those real life connections. Because it starts at colleagues, or it starts at strangers, then it goes to colleagues, and then it could possibly be friends. And like, who doesn't need that? And then the last one here is look at each connection as a way to be mutually beneficial. I know that a lot of the business world and a lot of how people carry on with like capitalism is this is all about like making the next dollar, and I think that's so short-sighted, and I think that's a lot of problems that we have is how short-sighted we look at the connections that we have with other people. So take the time to be like, I always like to end the conversation on like, well, what do you need help with right now? What are you going through? How can I help you? What connections are you looking for? And you'll be surprised that people need things that are so basic. Hey, can you repost this for me? Sure. Hey, you know this person, can you connect me with them? Sure. Like, there's a lot of easy things that you can do to make other people's lives easier. And really, like, if it's even just a career thing, help people along in their own careers. So that is networking piece. And then we also have personal life. So I think I had Meg Lewis on my podcast, and they talked about being a kid and like how a lot of their story comes from them being a kid and loving clowns and loving circuses, and like you look at the work that they're putting out and you can see that. Like you see the clown and the big like performance of it all. And Meg talked about how they got so much joy from like embracing that part of themselves. And so that made me think about the things that, like, as a kid that I wanted to do and I wanted to be, and like explore those things. Your kid you was not tampered down by anybody. They were free, and hopefully up to a point, they were free to be whoever they wanted to be. And so you explored a lot of things that you really did care about with no dampers. You just were being a kid. You were being again, not tamped down. You were just out there, and there's a lot of joy that you experience at that point. That now that you're an adult doesn't mean you have to give that up. So, what as a kid did you love, and try to find those things. I've been lately because for a long time I just didn't know how to have fun. So I'll think about it. I'm like, well, what would kid me want to do today? And I'll go out and do that. One day I went to the park and just shot hoops for by myself for an hour, and it was so much fun. Because me and my brother used to do that when we were kids. We would just go outside and just shoot the basketball around. So really think about that. And then the second one being work isn't everything. And I said it 3 times because I think that is we've been programmed, so maybe we have to unprogram ourselves. So we need to see it more. But work isn't everything. It's not your whole life. And for a long time, being a black person, black man, I grew up and my mom was like, well, you're smart. She was a school teacher, and she really believed in education being the key. She was like, you're really smart in math and sciences, you're gonna be an engineer, you're gonna go to the school down the road, and it was all pre-prescribed to me by the time I was in 5th grade. And so that is obviously absolutely what happened. And so in that, she was like, well, doing this route, you will make a certain amount of money as soon as you graduate from college, and you'll have no student loans. So that whole decision was based on not having to pay back debt. And to think about that now makes me so sad. I did so much and gave up so much of my life for something that just could have been avoided. We could have done anything else. There's a lot of things out there that you can do. And just in the realm of just to avoid debt is crazy. So I now think about it in those moments that I was having in 2020 around the time I was getting laid off and the turmoil I was going through and not being able to connect with my family. It's been a lot of, again, unprogramming, and I feel like it's just now that I'm starting to be able to connect with my wife and my kid and understand the value of those things. So it does take time, but work isn't everything. You can do so much more, and life has so much more for you. So last thing on this one is everyone needs colleagues and friends. I know this is another thing we're talking about, a male loneliness epidemic. I think everyone's lonely. I don't think it's just men. I think everybody's lonely. So take the opportunity to, like I said, it starts as strangers. Everything starts somewhere. It starts as strangers, and then maybe you guys have a common interest in design. There's a lot of people here who love design. So I think that's a great opportunity to start. And it starts at colleagues, and then maybe it moves to friends. There's some design friends that I've had for years, and we just now started doing a monthly game night. And now we're moving that relationship from colleagues to maybe to being more friendship based, where you need people, you need to be able to depend on people, and that starts at strangers. So it's hard to hear, but that is where it starts. And so that is my list of tips. I also had one more piece that I wanted to add here, and that is community. I feel like that is something that is just now being more talked about, because again, I think people are hurting and people need things. So community is a commitment to each other that each and every one of us has value. And again, we see that value word. People have value, and we have to treat them like they do. Without that commitment, our focus falls to only moving our individual selves forward. And in that moving only our individual selves forward, we can lose a lot of things, and one of those things being the other people who live on this planet with us. So the group will always take us further forward, which will always give us a more textured life. I like the word textured here because, again, we're designers, but those nooks and crannies and the things that kind of stick out and poke around, there's joy in there, there's happiness in there, there's fun in there, and we can't do that with just ourselves. You can't do that just in a room locked by yourself or in situations where it's only just you. So I wanted to shout out some of the Phoenix communities that I participate in. Creative Mornings is one that is great. They do Friday talks. I think they have one this Friday coming up. Phoenix Drink and Draw, we had one last night. We'll have another one in October, which will be a pumpkin carving, which is always a good time. And then AIGA has a ton of programming to always look out for. And then Dialogue is a coffee shop downtown, and they always have a ton of programming. They have live figure drawing. On Monday nights, they do like disconnect nights where you're just there to play board games with other people who are there to disconnect from the world. So those are kind of the 4 places that I participate in. And so I wanted to leave you with, even in the dark, even the dark feels brighter when you aren't by yourself. So I think that's a big deal. Like, it doesn't have to be so dark, it doesn't have to be so hard. Reaching out, I know, has been something that they're literally putting gaps or putting walls in between us, but we have to find ways to climb those walls and connect with the people who are next to us experiencing the same things with us. I also have some goodies for you. The font that you see is one that I made. So the first QR code is a link to that font if you want to be able to use that. I know designers love fonts, so I wanted to give you something on the back end. And then I have a podcast called Creative Questions. I just had Amy Hood on from Chutzpah, and we talked about freelancing. They have a book called Freelance Business and Stuff. So we talked a lot about freelancing. We talked about niching. We talked about a lot of good design stuff on that podcast. So those links will take you to both of those things. And then I wanted to end it with questions if you all have any questions. And I can leave it on this slide if that's helpful. So do we have any questions about that, or comments, or hey, I think you're cool?
You're dope. That is a big part of why I'm here. I feel like I'm so inspired by people that their journey has not been. I've always been vulnerable, and I've always had. It's a journey for me. It's definitely been a journey. I was very introverted, and it's taken a lot of community building and stepping outside of comfort zones to do that. What, in terms of bringing more analog into a very, very, very digital world, what's other than the going out and getting starting analog things? What's something we can do within the context of maybe like a business? I work in a corporate environment, and it's a struggle. What do you recommend? Is conversations with people about this, or bringing you tools that are like, hey, maybe instead of doing this in Figma, maybe we sit and sketch this together?
Yeah, I think those are both great opportunities. I think analog is probably the definition of analog is changing. I think analog just means different from what is the norm. I think that's what it could mean. I know with a lot of I do a lot of branding work, and sometimes I will just a couple weeks ago, I took a logo and I cut it out in construction paper and then scanned it back in. And then I'm like, oh, well, what kind of noise can I get from the cuts and the scanning? And I look for opportunity to where I can find extra noise within the processes or the things that I have to make. And I understand at some points when you do work for corporate, there's not a lot of room for that. And that's where I mean, maybe that is looking at the team differently. Maybe we ask this guy who hasn't really gotten to lead something but they're super interested in it. That is a way to get some diversity in what we're doing in the everyday. So really just knowing the people around you, I think, can be also being analog or looking outside of how things are traditionally done. So.
That's great. You're very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we live in an unfortunately capitalist society,
For sure.
Which is frustrating. And how do you balance the demand of the digital algorithm, especially with a small business or even in corporate, the demand of that versus trying to embrace the human?
For sure.
It's the struggle of trying to figure out where you can fall, where you can still pay your bills.
Yeah, and I mean, again, my wife and I have a business. We both have small businesses, so we have to still make money. We still have an apartment that costs money every month. I think you do what you can. I think a lot of people have social media guilt. I think that guilt takes a lot from what you could be doing. You could be having fun instead of having that guilt. So I think if there's something that you truly want to do, and this is why I think we should change the way that we think about social media. I think about it more in like a campaign style. So do I need to go out and like drum up a bunch of work? Then what do I want to say to do that? And what is the cutoff point? Like it has to be a cutoff point. Otherwise, like it stays open and there's only guilt. You only feel bad about it. So what is the moment where you can be like, okay, well, this will be for 3 months, and this is what I want out of it, and this is how I'm going to do it. I think you think of it more of like, what would you do for a client, or what would you do for your corporate job? Like, think about it like that, and I think that takes some of that off because in there is more of a rigid structure, and it's not just like shame and guilt. There's like, we've put something together here that makes sense, we'll execute on it, and if it is bad or it doesn't work, hey, we take a break and we come back to it and we do it better next time. But you actually have like a baseline, and it's not just, I've seen so many designers or freelancers or business owners just be like, well, I kind of hate social media and I don't really want to do it. And I feel this guilt and shame every day. And it's like, that's keeping you up at night. That's keeping you from doing something fun. Like, so, and a lot of the way that I do so I have a podcast, I have a Substack, and I use those as those are long form, so I can take stuff from them and cut them up and put them out as content. But it starts with things that I like to do, or I'm interested in. I felt like I wasn't a good writer, so I was like, okay, well, let's take this moment to learn how to write or feel better about my writing. So I started writing Substack articles, and I found out I actually really like writing, and it's like I like talking, so obviously I like writing. And so I started cutting pieces out of that and then putting them on LinkedIn, or cutting my podcast up in a clip. Is it going to take effort? Yes. But you're right, it is capitalism. Sometimes we don't get a say in what we want and what we want to do. And hopefully it's a means to an end where maybe you get to be so big and you just get to go to conferences and be paid to market yourself. So it's kind of like the handoff. And I do understand that it's hard, but at least try to make a structure around it to make you feel less guilty and less shameful about it. I think it is good. I do. Yes?
So you do a really good job of, you've got your podcast, you're making fonts, you're doing Substack, you're doing all of these things, and then you're also running a business, and you're also doing the design, and you're doing the reach out, and you're doing the project management.
Yes.
And you're a dad, and you're a husband.
Yeah.
And obviously the fonts and stuff, I'm assuming that is a passion project, but it also goes with all of your branding. You're very consistent
For sure.
with your branding.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a twofold question. Is one, where do you find, it seems like you just can't help yourself.
I can't.
Just
my wife knows that. She's like, you should be doing something else. I don't care.
So I appreciate that. I was actually talking to a friend about this last night. I feel like I have used my creative well at work.
Yes.
And so I get home and I'm like, I just need to not do creative work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've used that creative juice.
100%.
Whereas my friend is an accountant and she just can't help herself.
Yeah.
And so you would see her house, you would see what she's doing, you think she was the designer.
Yep.
So how do you keep that?
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
I have ADHD, so I have ADHD, so that's where it comes from a lot of the times is I just can't help, like you said, I can't help myself. My brain is going to do it anyway, and so instead of feeling bad about it, I think I lean into it, which is not great for time management, managing projects, and there's probably a project right now I should be working on, but I'm here. So, I think corporate is hard. Like I said, it is a hard place to be. It is you're put in a spot where you really don't get to be yourself, or they want the juice, but you don't get to do the juice in your way. You don't get to add the flavor to it the way you want to. That was good. I like
That was good.
But I think sometimes we have to think outside of what we do. You might be someone who cuts clips every day, or you edit videos every day, but there's something outside of that might be fun that isn't cutting clips. Maybe it's painting, maybe it's even purchasing art. If you go to my house, we just have art everywhere. like all over the walls. It kind of looks crazy. Like I feel like someone's gonna come and be like, y'all are insane. And I'm like, yeah, we're the good insane though. So it's like, where can you find those spots of joy and fun and like, I just know that like it's out there. You just have to like open your eyes to it. It just takes time and like it takes awareness. Like at some point you have to realize like this is really hard and I love being a creative and I love creative things, but I just don't have the time for this type per se. But maybe you find events, like I'll go to Drink and Draw and I'll get a chance to just draw. But it's set time where I can do something creative outside of like what I do every day. So, and I know people are starting to do more events like that where like Stitch and Bitch and like there's a lot of things going on where you can kind of like get out of your zone and do something that's a little different. I know it's hard though. I do understand that is incredibly hard. So maybe finding those small wins is kind of where you start. Anything else? Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I do have a follow-up comment to your question. So I was in corporate for years, and what I would do, because I knew that my creative well was like dry when I got home, I would use my PTO, just take time off. And so I would decide like, they gave me a certain amount of hours a year, and I was there for 13 years, so I had a bunch of PTO. But I would like have my time for vacation and everything else, but I knew, okay, come these 3 days, I'm gonna take 1 day to do nothing, binge watch, walk around the house, whatever I want to do. And this particular day, I'm going to spend the day designing and doing a passion project. And then the next day, I'm going to cry about the fact that I have to go back to work. But I took that time out because I knew that there was no other way I was going to be able to create and do passion stuff, because when you're in corporate, you're on salary and people want to call you and bug you and drive you crazy. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. I never thought about that. That's actually good.
Or my sick time. Like I had bad baked times. I just take that time.
And most people don't use it.
No, they don't.
You're like fooling them with your own boundaries.
Yeah.
Oh, they think, it's like, no, this is for me because you guys suck.
Exactly.
Mental health day. Like I think the last 2-3 years of corporate, I was just like, okay, this is my time. And then during Christmas time, before I went back, because you really get that time off work where nobody's really bothering you, I'm here, not really gonna wiggle my mouse, we're doing creative stuff.
Well, it's hard to like reprogram, how you're saying too, like we're programmed or how you grew up or whatever. Like it's sad that we have to think about like, I wanted to make money first, because it's like, hey, if you gotta go into this, we don't want you working at the coal mine or whatever.
Exactly.
And now and you're trying to like, I don't know. Well, for me personally, I'm trying to like fall in love with failing again.
Yeah.
I
love that. Yeah. And and failing's such a like good word. Like it feels harsh, but it is like.
Well, I grew up, it's like don't fail.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
And it's like, and that starts putting the boundaries on you, and you're like, okay, well, I'll do the safe thing. But safe eventually puts you in a box. You're just like, I don't know what to do anymore. So yeah, I think we all have an opportunity here. Like there's a moment here. Like we listened to the speakers yesterday. There's a moment here to do things differently and to step into a different design world. But are we going to take it? I think that's the question. And that's going to take being brave, being daring, failing, doing some things that are a little weird. But if this is what we love and what we want to do, we got to figure out how to do it together. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, it's pwr.create. So it's also in the book. Yeah, it's in the book.